Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report Spotlight. Today we have a new guest, Max Porterfield. Max has over 10 years of experience in natural resources and the financial markets. He is the CEO and president and director of Calinex Mines, and I am very happy to have him on the X22 Report Spotlight. Max, welcome to the Spotlight.
Thanks so much for having me.
Hey, thanks for being here. And I want to just start off with the economy and where you think the equity market is going and what you're seeing out there today. Now, what we're seeing is the stock market is continually being pushed up. And I mean, it hit 26,000 points. The S&P 500 is continually moving up. Do you believe that this is going to continue on this upward trend, or do you think there's a correction headed our way?
Well, how long we continue on the upward trend, I think no one knows, but I think it would be healthy if you did see an overall correction in domestic equity markets take a heck of a run over the past decade with very few pullbacks, and it's natural in a bull market to have corrections and pullbacks. So I wouldn't be surprised to see one in the not too distant future.
Now, when you say correction, like you're talking about like a 5% correction, 10% correction?
Yeah, I mean, I think a 10% correction would be healthy. Wouldn't be anything too drastic, but I think the sooner you get a correction in place, the better off everyone will be in the longer term, because there has been a heck of performance, again, as you mentioned just briefly there, and it's just natural to have corrections in the equity space, and a 10 to 15% correction wouldn't be out of line.
Now, what's very interesting is Mnuchin came out and he said something about a weak dollar, and the markets went crazy. Then Trump came out and corrected him, saying, no, the U.S. has a strong dollar policy. But it looks like he kind of nudged the economy to make people believe that the U.S. is going to be following a weak dollar policy. Now, if the U.S., and we see the dollar falling right now, it's continually declining. As the dollar declines, is this good for the precious metals market?
Yeah, it's going to be great for the precious metals and overall commodity and real asset space. Obviously, they're all priced in U.S. dollars. A weak dollar would mean that you see prices increase for the underlying commodities and precious metals.
And what about like mining stocks? I mean, do you think that would help the mining stocks?
Yeah, it should be a big boost for the mining stocks because each individual company, depending on where their focus is going to be inherently benefited by that increase in commodity prices. So you haven't seen that yet. You've seen the move in the underlying commodities right now, whether it be in the precious metal space. You've seen a nice move year to date. You've also seen it over the past year and a half in the base metals, with copper and zinc being excellent performers. So the juniors haven't followed suit yet on a broader context, and I definitely think it's going to happen in due course.
Now, Trump got his tax plan passed, and he's looking to push a huge infrastructure plan. China and the emerging markets are pushing the One Belt, One Road project, and your company deals with gold, silver, zinc. How important is silver and zinc in these projects? I mean, do they use these base metals in building and creating things?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of we're very focused on zinc ourselves as a company. We do have byproducts like you mentioned, silver and lead as well as some gold in the portfolio. With that being said, 52% of zinc demand on an annual basis is from the galvanization process. The galvanization is used to protect steel from rusting. So it's going to be very critical to any kind of infrastructure spending policy that you'll see out of the United States, or the One Belt, One Road program that you mentioned out of China, because we have big demand on the base metals, particularly zinc. If you look at the United States, for example, in the 1950s is really the last time you had a big interstate build out in the U.S. That was a great time to be in commodities during the 1950s, and all those projects have certain lives to them. The average life you get off of a galvanization, galvanized steel is going to be about 50 years or so. So we're past that. I think anybody that's living in the United States right now and is driving on the roads, crossing the bridges, made some headlines here and there, wouldn't mind seeing their tax dollars spent to improve the infrastructure, as well as part of what makes a an economy competitive.
Now, what country is the biggest producer of zinc?
In terms of the country, in terms of production, you're going to see China is the biggest producer of zinc. I think the big story on zinc outside of the demand side is really it's a supply side story. You've had about 10 to 15% of global mine supply come offline over the past several years, really due to these large deposits that were producing being depleted and coming to their end of life there. Meanwhile, you do see China getting more serious about environmental concerns within the country, and I think that's part of the pressure they're getting from their citizens, where you have about 22 small zinc mines be halt production last year alone in one province. And I think that's going to be something you're going to see more and more going forward. Meanwhile, because the zinc prices were so low for much of the last 5-6 years, there really hasn't been any exploration and development for new zinc dominant mines. A lot of the mines that produce zinc in the world today are actually a byproduct of another mine like silver. So that you can't readily just turn things on. And when you have this kind of exploration development pushback, and you have a tight market like you've seen, you need to rely on above ground stockpiles. And that's what the market's been doing over the past 5 years, relying on above ground stockpiles. Today, in the LME exchange, so one of the largest exchanges for stockpiles of zinc, you got about 180,000 tons, which is less than 10 days of consumption. So it's a very, very tight market that's led to zinc being at a decade high. I think it's got more room to run in the near future, based upon supply constraints with healthy demand out there, and even more coming online with any of these government policies being put in place.
Now, is there a shortage of zinc right now?
Yes, the zinc has been in a shortage and a deficit for the past several years. It's forecast to be in a deficit for the next 2 years or so. That again, like I alluded to earlier, has been made up, and the gap has been met with above ground inventories. But those above ground inventories are now at a critically low level, with less than 10 days of supply. So basically, if all mining stopped today and all refining stopped, there'd only be 10 days of zinc inventories out there in the world.
Now, your company is working on many different projects. What projects are you working on right now?
Well, we're primarily focused on advancing our Nash Creek project, which is in the Bathurst mining district of New Brunswick in Canada. It's a near-surface deposit that we're looking to move it forward as an open pit operation, which would be a lower end of the operating cost as well as capital costs taken in production. Also benefits from excellent infrastructure, being less than a mile from a provincial highway, less than 15 to 20 miles from a smelter, deep water port rail, and then this high voltage power that runs additions to that highway that I mentioned. So what we've done there is we acquired that deposit at low zinc prices, April 2016, when zinc was sub 80 cents. Zinc now just recently hitting highs of $1.63 a pound, and that's in US dollars. We've been advancing it very, very aggressively over the past 8 months or so. We've just announced recent drilling on the property where we extended the deposit roughly 600 meters to the north, which is a 50% increase on the strike length of the deposit. And we'll be putting an updated resource in very short order, as well as a preliminary economic assessment in terms of what a mining operation would look like, some cost parameters around that, to get out there to our shareholders and investors. And when we're doing all this, we're approaching it at $1.25 zinc. So it's going to have big sensitivity to these higher zinc prices, and really where zinc goes in the future.
Now, just before, we talked about the stock market and how you said there's going to be a correction, but we're seeing all stocks, worldwide, they're trading at all-time high right now. The S&P 500 is up every month for more than a year with a record low volatility. The only cheap sector right now is commodities, and you kind of mentioned that. Do you think commodities are like one of the best places to invest right now because they are so cheap?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you look at the valuations we're seeing in equities, they are at all-time highs. But you're not seeing that in the commodities space. But commodities tend to be the last sector to really move in a cycle. And we haven't seen any institutional asset flows come into the commodity space like you've seen in the past. And I think that's a matter of time. I think there's institutional money on the sideline. But at some point when they rebalance their portfolios, they're going to have to reallocate that And I think with all the catalysts going forward for higher commodity prices that we discussed earlier, it'd be a great place for them to reallocate their capital like they have done in the past. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if it happened again in the future.
Now, talking about commodities, the crypto market has taken off like crazy. I mean, people are, using their credit cards to get into Bitcoin. People are just like saying, okay, I'm going to go into this market because we see the market continually moving up and up and up. Yes, it has come down a little bit and it bounces back up. And gold and other precious metals, that they've been steady for quite a while. Do you think everyone is rushing into the crypto market because the gold and silver market hasn't really moved, and the mining stocks, they haven't really moved? Do you think everyone's rushing there right now because of that?
Well, I think in any hot sector, you're going to see money flow and money chase that type of performance. I think the overall fundamentals behind the cryptocurrencies and where they're at right now are extensively extended. I mean, you've seen the pullback there. It was no different, in my opinion, what we saw when gold hit $1,900 an ounce, it was 9-10 years ago, around 2006, 2007 timeframe. We started seeing, advertisements on television about gold. You saw the same thing on Bitcoin or any of these other cryptocurrencies, where the mainstream media, the average investor, started looking to make investments without really understanding what they're investing in, and that's when you can kind of get bubbles created. I do think that cryptocurrencies will have a place in the future, and definitely do think that the assets they have attracted have taken away from the precious metal space that would traditionally receive precious metals and investment. Some of that has flowed into cryptos or other hot sectors, such as maybe the marijuana industry recently, as well as biotech before both of those.
Now, do you think as the dollar continually declines and gold starts to really move, I mean, right now it's like 1,300 and change, whatnot, silver's still very low. Do you think people are going to take their funds out of the crypto market, cash out, and purchase gold and silver at this time? I mean, do you think they're both going to work in together at one point?
No, I mean, I don't think you're going to see a rise in cryptos at the same time that you see a rise in gold. I think if you're seeing a rise in gold prices, you're likely going to see cryptos coming off. Gold is, again, a hard asset. For thousands of years, it's been looked at as a currency. That doesn't just change overnight with an advent of these cryptocurrencies. You're already seeing some issues with the cryptos and higher transaction costs, slower transaction times, issues with hacking. Those type of things, are kind of becoming more prevalent. I think there's some things that need to get ironed out in the crypto space. And again, I think cryptocurrencies will have a place where there are, who knows. But I definitely think when, you're hearing people that don't traditionally even invest in stocks talking about opening up accounts to invest in buy cryptos, expecting 1,000% return, you're kind of probably at the back end of a big movement in an asset class that's very extended.
So where do you see the use of zinc, since your company deals with zinc and we're talking about different types of metals and things like that? Where do you see zinc going in the future with infrastructure building and other things that are happening out in China and everywhere else? Where do you see the future going?
Well, I mean, you need zinc in everyday use for everything that you utilize, whether it's in the car that you drive, in your house, the building that you go to work on, the bridge that you cross. It's the fourth most consumed metal in the world. I don't people really realize how much of a necessity it is and how much of a role it plays in their daily lives. But it is the base metals are the building blocks of the global economy in a lot of ways. So I think the big demand drivers moving forward for zinc, being infrastructure spending, will obviously lead to a higher long-term price for zinc, which is going to incentivize new exploration and development for these deposits. Because, and just not in the zinc space, but on a global basis for all commodities, really, same can be said for precious metals. These deposits are becoming more and more difficult to find, and the typical grade or the percentage of whatever material we're discussing relative to what you're looking to mine it is going down. So it's getting more difficult and more costly to mine these type of deposits. And that's only going to be facilitated with higher prices to really incentivize companies like Callinex to go out there and take those risks of their capital because, again, at the end of the day, we have shareholders, investors, and we're doing this as a business, not as a charity for, the rest of the world, so to speak.
Now, besides the project that you just mentioned, are you working on anything else where you spotted other zinc deposits?
Well, we actually control 3 zinc deposits in eastern Canada. We just wrapped up drilling on our Superjet project, which is going to fit into the PEA that I mentioned. We also have acquired at the bottom of the zinc cycle a project in Newfoundland called our Point Leamington project. And we've got a substantial exploration portfolio in northern Manitoba, where you've got a 90-year history of, mining for base and precious metals there. So again, we're opportunistic where we, spend our capital, and the bulk of the capital going forward is going to be spent on Nash Creek. And we're always looking for different opportunities, whether it be M&A activity as well.
Now, with China creating the One Belt, One Road trade, and I believe there's like 70 countries that are on this right now. The United States is not at this point. But Trump, like we said, he's pushing for this gigantic infrastructure budget to build. With the One Belt, One Road, and China being the biggest producer of zinc, do they control the entire zinc output right now? Are they the main force behind zinc?
Well, I mean, they're going to have a big, they're kind of the big gorilla in the room, so to speak, in terms of zinc consumption as well as on the supply side. But with that being said, I think the real in terms of control is going to be on the refined zinc and refining on the smelting side of things. So when we mine a zinc deposit, a zinc producer does that, they're going to send their zinc concentrate to a refiner or a smelter to have it to produce into a refined product. And if you look in terms of where is the supply for refined zinc globally, it's actually controlled by really 3 key countries, much like OPEC is controlled by 16 countries. The 3 countries that control refined zinc, 55% of refined zinc, are South Korea, Japan, and China. Actually, there's one smelter in South Korea alone that supplies 10% of the global refined zinc out there, which is equivalent to basically the Saudi Arabia is to oil on the global space. So that's where I see some, kind of geopolitical black swan type of event occurring would be to any of those smelting operations in the Asian region.
So when you say a geopolitical event occurring, what do you mean by that?
I mean, there's a lot of obviously talk with North Korea, what North Korea might do in terms of this kind of standoff with the West. And it's a really sensitive area. I mean, obviously it's been in headlines. It wouldn't be no news to surprise anyone about, some kind of event occurring in that region. And Japan is obviously in the target sites as well as South Korea. So any kind of cutback on the refined zinc supply and the smelting, or setback to any of those kind of those operations would have a big dramatic impact on zinc prices moving forward.
So you're saying if there's, say, North Korea does something, or they fire a missile at Japan or South Korea, or they start a war, this will dramatically increase the price of zinc.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's no different than what you saw in the Gulf War, where they were going out and setting a lot of those oil wells on fire systematically on purpose. So, I mean, these type of things have happened in the past. Not going to say that's going to happen in the future, but it's also not out of the realm of possibility for that to be a concern if you're watching the zinc space, particularly in how tight of a market it is right now.
Max, thank you very much for being on the X22 Report Spotlight. Once again, how can people get information on your company and get in touch with you?
Yeah, people can get in touch by visiting our website at callinex.ca. That's CALLINEX.ca. And give us a call. Our website, our phone number is on the website there. You can also buy our shares on the Toronto Venture Exchange on the ticker CNX, as well as we've got a listing on the OTCQX in the United States with the ticker CLLXF.
Max, once again, thank you very much for being on the Spotlight. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me.